Portland's two-person mayor's race is evenly split three ways, between voters for Mayor Wheeler, those for Sarah Iannarone, and somebody named Undecided. But what if it didn't have to come down to two candidates?
Many Americans see the two-party system as corrupt.
The Oregon County dipping its toes into the pool of ranked choice voting. And hang on a minute. How often do Oregon voters actually get more than one ballot in the mail?
Just about every election.
Okay, all right, look, before you start drafting your concerned emails, he also says not to worry. Really. Here's the story.
And I would like to be the first to welcome you to the story. As always, we want to hear from you. Look on your screen for ways to talk to us throughout the show. We're going to be answering a lot of your questions tonight. My name is Dan Haggerty. If you need help with the spelling, it's on the wall behind me, or Google Grizzly Adams. All right, let's get started with the big story. The undecideds. All right, who will become the ultimate deciders? We're talking again about the race to become the mayor of Portland between Mayor Ted Wheeler and the challenger Sarah Iannarone. In a recent DHM poll commissioned by OPB, Iannarone leads Wheeler by just 1 point, 34 to 33%. So by that view, it would appear that this is a dead heat. Now, on yesterday's show, we talked about the hardesty factor for undecided voters, how if Sarah Iannarone becomes mayor, Commissioner Joanne Hardesty will likely become the Portland Police Commissioner. If Mayor Wheeler stays in office, she probably won't. We thought that this hardesty factor would be a good way to differentiate between these two candidates. And then I got this Facebook message from a viewer named Nicole, who said, the word in the black community is the Teresa Rayford factor. And Nicole may be onto something. See, in that same poll that we just mentioned, 6% said that they plan on writing in Teresa Rayford for mayor. She's the founder of Don't Shoot Portland and a big name in the activist community. Now, the narrative seems to be that the Portlanders writing in for Rayford are going to be drawing votes away from Sarah Iannarone because those two kind of more closely align on politics and priorities compared to Mayor Wheeler. Now, to be extremely clear in all of this when it comes to Rayford, despite an extremely vocal writing campaign by her supporters, Rayford herself has done next to no official campaigning. She hasn't given endorsement interviews, held campaign events, nothing that I know of. We actually tried reaching out to get an explanation for all of this, but no one has jumped at that invitation. That said, there is no denying her presence is looming in this election. And yesterday, I had a chance to ask Sarah Iannarone straight out if she thinks that these write-in candidates may hurt her chances.
The most recent poll has a 6% of people writing in Teresa Rayford. If you look at the people who support her, I would say that they are more closely aligned with your political views than they would be Mayor Ted Wheeler's, not to compare you and Teresa apples to apples by any means.
The big factor here is undecideds. You know, there are people who want different things in a candidate. A representation is one of them. And so whether or not we agree on policy, there are some things that I can never be, and a Black woman is one of them. But what I can offer is progressive policy changes. And really my goal is right now to reach those undecided voters. There's a huge swath of them, and really make the case that I'm the better choice for them over the incumbent. You know, the number of people writing in was actually quite bigger than that 6% just for Ms. Rayford. There were a lot of people, I think, on all ends of the political spectrum who have their own ideas about how they want things to go.
Now, if you talk to pollsters or the experts, they think that those Rayford voters are ultimately going to be drawing from Sarah Iannarone and her vote totals. But our write-in saga doesn't end there. See, those Rayford voters aren't the only write-in voters that we need to consider. 14% total of voters told DHM that they're going to be writing in someone other than Rayford. So who are those voters? Who are those people, and how might they impact this race? Where are they leaning? The pollsters at DHM pointed out that many of them are either registered Republicans or non-affiliated. Now look, any other year, these more conservative voters may have broken for Wheeler over the more left-leaning Iannarone. But after the summer we have just had in this city, in Portland, conservative voters aren't happy with any of their choices. So instead of picking the more moderate of the two, they may write in a conservative name or not vote at all. And that could kill Wheeler's chances for re-election. You know, after all, people on both sides of the aisle found reasons to be mad at the mayor over the way that the protests were handled. And when I talked to him earlier this week, I tried to drill down on that, but he pushed back. Take a listen.
I think some people, they found your stance around federal involvement and your stance as police commissioner with police tactics early on to be kind of contradictory, I think is one of the ways where people found you to be kind of going a little bit back and forth. For instance, when the protests and the violent protests first started months and months ago, a lot of the tactics that were being used, forceful tactics by police, including the use of tear gas, were one of the things that protesters continue to cite as reasons to come back and build encouragement night after night. When the federal government came in, you kind of switched teams and stood against the federal government when, for the most part, the tactics mirrored what the Portland Police Bureau had been doing and continue to do.
No, I strongly dispute that. And even the Portland Police Bureau leadership would strongly dispute that. The tactics that were used by the federal government when they, first of all, let me step back and just say, I have a good relationship with our local federal officers. We've had a long-standing close relationship and close ties that have been effective in addressing all kinds of crime, whether it's drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and the like. But what was different was when the federal government flew in people from all over the United States to create a stronghold here in the city of Portland. They were absolutely indiscriminate. They were absolutely acting in a manner that greatly increased not only the size of the crowds, but the anger and the energy of the crowds. And we're still dealing with that today. Our tactics, while sometimes indiscriminate and sometimes, in my opinion, overbearing, and all those, we have a process for investigating and holding officers accountable here in Portland when there is an action that doesn't comport with training or directives. But the federal government came in here. Let's remember what they did. It wasn't just the tear gassing on a nightly basis. It wasn't just the lack of warning, but they were literally scooping people off the streets in unmarked vans, not giving them their due process, not telling them who they were or why they were being forced into vans. The Portland Police Bureau never engaged in any tactics even remotely like that. So it was very easy for me to differentiate between the rules that we have in place and the accountability mechanisms we have in place, as imperfect as they are, and the heavy-handed, overbearing, probably unconstitutional tactics that were used by the federal government.
Now, look, you don't need to hear it from me. This looks like it's going to shape up to be an extremely close race, one where every vote counts. And if you were one of those people kind of teetering between writing someone in or not voting at all, I hope you choose to vote. That said, Multnomah County did tell us last week that they don't even count write-in votes unless a candidate shows a real shot at contending. Regardless, we want you to be as informed as you can be. Both of my conversations with Mayor Wheeler and Sarah Iannarone are up right now on the KGW YouTube channel. Watch them, know these candidates, and turn in those ballots. Now look, I know that this can kind of all start to feel like homework sometimes. We have busy lives. It's hard to get to know these candidates enough to feel confident in your decision. I mean, do you remember how overwhelming that was during the May primary when like half of the city was running for public office? I mean, there were tons of candidates for mayor. We had to choose between all of these people. And since nobody got more than 50% of the vote during that primary, we ended up with this runoff where the top two vote getters run against each other, Ted Wheeler and Sarah Iannarone. But voters in Benton County, they're going to be trying something new this year. Their race for the county commissioner. They're going to be debuting ranked choice voting. See, the way it works is instead of voting for just one candidate, you rank your preferences. So your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. It's kind of like a chili cook-off. If someone gets more than 50% of the number one rankings, that person wins. But if we see another scenario like the Portland mayoral primary where the votes are kind of dispersed across the field and nobody passes that winning threshold, then the candidate who receives the lowest ranking is eliminated and the percentages are recalculated. And you keep eliminating that lowest ranked candidate until somebody crosses that 50% threshold.
Many Americans see the two-party system as corrupt, as limiting their options. And so the ability to expand that without, again, feeling like they are going to waste their votes on a hopeless candidate or hopeless party is, I think, appealing to a lot of citizens who really want their vote to count, but also want to express an opinion or a position that is outside of that two-party norm.
Now, again, this isn't some fantasy idea. I mean, this is happening this November in Benton County in the commissioner's election and again in their sheriff's race in 2022. Also, should tell you the state of Maine already uses this in their federal races, and Alaska will vote this November whether they want to do the same. Of course, this only works when you're voting on a group of people. When it comes to measures, that is a yes or no question. And Oregon voters have a lot of measures to pick between, like Measure 26-217, which would create a new Portland Police Oversight Board. Maggie Vespa dug into some of the obstacles that measure could face if it passes.
Police reform has been a major headline for the majority of 2020, both here in Portland and nationwide. Now, amid an election like no other, Portlanders have a chance to overhaul the city's police oversight system. City Measure 26-217 gives Portland voters the chance to amend city code and establish a new oversight committee made up of civilians. The committee would be independent from any existing city bureau, but would receive at least 5% of the police bureau's budget. They would have the power to subpoena officers to testify and impose discipline, including firing. Right now, according to the Portland Police Union contract, the only person who can fire an officer is the police commissioner, Mayor Ted Wheeler. Back in July, the city council, including Mayor Wheeler, voted unanimously to send this measure to the ballot. Commissioner Joanne Hardesty is all for it.
This would bring true community accountability. Good police officers shouldn't fear this measure. They should embrace it, because over and over and over again, we've seen outrageous behavior by police, and they were not held accountable.
Opponents are vocal too. Daryl Turner, president of the Portland Police Association, sent a letter to council blasting the measure, calling it irredeemably vague. Noting it was written without input from the police union or the bureau, he argues it fails to provide details like how many members will be on the board, who nominates them, what are their terms. If a board member acts inappropriately, he wrote, who has the authority to remove them? The measure, he argued, is proposed on a will fill in the blanks later basis. Then there's opposition not from anyone with a badge or a gun, but from the city auditor.
It's breathtaking, actually, and not in a good way.
Mary Hull Caballero is actually so against the measure, she held a press conference prior to that council vote, calling it
an unvetted, unrefined oversight model to the ballot.
For those wondering about the connection here, the city's current police oversight system exists under the umbrella of the city auditor's office. Independent Police Review, or IPR, and its Citizen Review Committee is essentially a group of attorneys, HR professionals, and everyday Portlanders who have the power to investigate allegations of misconduct and recommend discipline, but they don't have the power to carry that discipline out. It's been a big criticism of IPR. Still, the city auditor, in the midst of a slideshow laying out her case, argued this measure is not the way to make change.
We don't know who is going to run this thing, who is going to hold it accountable.
Much of the power promised in the measure, she argues, is in direct opposition with the Portland Police Association contract, which is up for renegotiation in January. Commissioner Hardesty argues if Portland voters approve this measure, the city will have the power of public opinion behind them at the negotiation table next year.
Unions are about protecting working conditions, and they're about protecting hours. Unions should never be used to protect bad employees that you are not, as the employer, able to fire.
Okay, Maggie Vespa joining us now. Maggie, let's take kind of an educated look into the future here. There was a poll published in OPB that said 70% of Portland voters support this, that it's likely to pass. If it does, how long until we see tangible, real change?
Yeah, so not for at least a year, or rather like a year and a half. Commissioner Hardesty said it'll take around 18 months to kind of get that commission into place. And during that 18 months, she expects to kind of iron out some of the gaps or fill in some of the details that Daryl Turner said in his letter were missing. At the same time, again, Turner leads the Portland Police Association, right? The PPA, and their contract negotiations, as we said, start in January. And an attorney for that union, represents all police officers, has been quoted saying that they have major concerns about the legality of this measure, about having that in place as they go into those contract talks. So even if this is passed, this could wind up kind of tied up in litigation for a while.
Interesting. All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you. What to do if you get 2 ballots in the mail, and why it actually isn't that big of a deal.
Nobody can vote twice.
When the story continues.
Welcome back. Hey, let's get right to one of your questions. People using that hashtag #HeyDan, like this viewer, Steve Schwab, writing us on Twitter saying, really like your show. You know what? Thank you for that compliment, Steve. That's a good way to start. He goes on to say, you are relatively new to the area. I thought you should know that just north of the Columbia is a whole other state. Who knew? Okay, so tonight's check on voter turnout is brought to you by Steve Schwab. His compliments are a trap. Now, we want to start by looking at voter turnout in the state of Washington. As of today, we talked to the Secretary of State there, reporting 848,365 votes returned so far. That's more than 17% of the state's 4.8 million registered voters. We want to zoom in a little bit to Clark County. They've recorded 53,343 there in Clark County votes received so far. Now, we want to talk about that little spot south of the Columbia. Statewide numbers grew big time since yesterday. Oregon Secretary of State now recording 495,082 ballots returned here in Oregon. So how do Oregon's numbers compare to the last presidential election as we kind of just take a look at how we're doing right now? Well, Oregon's at 17% turnout as of today. This time in 2016, we had only hit 13%, and the average is 11%. So right now, it's safe to say we are definitely shooting past expectations. Now, 2 more election-related questions to answer for you. One, how to get a replacement ballot if you need one, and also, what if you get 2 ballots? For the answers, we call not 1 but 2 investigative reporters. First up, here's Kristen Severance.
A mom and story viewer in Southwest Portland contacted us after she and 3 neighbors had their ballots go missing out of their mailbox. She emailed saying, I am a full-time mom with a baby. Time is short. How do I get new ballots for my family in time for the election? Thank you, Stephanie, so much for contacting us. Look, we know you have a lot on your plate. We thought, let us at least verify this for you and for anyone else who needs a new ballot.
You know, I've been an Oregonian for my entire life, and I've never had an issue. So it felt really strange to have it happen to me.
Stephanie Prendergast said while all of her neighbors received their ballots this weekend, her ballot was missing out of her mailbox.
What were you worried about? Well, as a full-time working mom with the baby and a pandemic and not very much childcare, I was kind of like, I felt really violated and upset because I felt like all of the news from the world kind of reached our doorstep. And then I was just kind of like really worried. I'm like, how many hours is it going to take me to figure out how to get us new ballots? And is it going to be a long process?
So we set out to verify what to do if you need a new ballot in Oregon and how long does it take. According to the Oregon Secretary of State's office, if your ballot arrives damaged, you make a mistake, spill something, lose your ballot, or for any other reason, contact your county elections office for a replacement ballot. In Multnomah County, you can call them for a replacement ballot, or you can use the online ordering form. It goes live October 22nd. There's also a will call pickup area at the main office in Southeast Portland and the voting center in Gresham. In Clackamas County, they recommend using the order ahead form on their website. Replacement ballots will be ready within an hour of ordering during business hours at the Clackamas County Elections Office in Oregon City or mailed the next day. Clackamas County will mail ballots up until October 29th. In Washington County, there's an online replacement ballot request form. Your ballot will be mailed 1 to 2 days after filling it out, or you can pick it up at the Washington County Elections Office in Hillsborough. No ballots will be mailed after October 29th. Stephanie says wherever you live, if you need a replacement ballot, make sure you get one.
It was really important to our household to at least do our part and vote.
One more thing, you can get a replacement ballot all the way up until 8 p.m. on election night, but elections officials recommend not waiting until then. All right, so that is how you get a replacement ballot. But what happens if you have 2 ballots? My colleague Kyle Aboshi is here with the answer.
Kristen, you know, we hear about this almost every election, somebody who gets 2 ballots. It's concerning, yes, but typically there's an explanation why it happens and safeguards in place to keep somebody from voting twice. Cliff and Carolyn Benbow were so excited to drop off their ballots, they snapped a few photos, kind of like a ballot selfie.
Because we saw people doing that, so we thought, okay, we're going to do it too.
Why not? So
Thought we could post it on Facebook, I guess.
The Fairview couple figured they'd done their civic duty. Now, like the rest of America, they'd sit back and wait for election results. Until, unexpectedly, a second ballot arrived with Cliff's name on it.
I didn't expect to see another one this year, but it just popped up there, so.
2 ballots made Cliff a bit uncomfortable, and for good reason.
It's, one per citizen is what it's supposed to be. And I don't have the slightest idea how we could be getting these extra ballots. I can't imagine that we would be the only ones out there getting these.
Just about every election, we get someone who's concerned because they got 2 ballots, but it is a very normal part of the process with vote by mail.
Tim Scott, director of Multnomah County Elections, explained ballots are prepared about a month before the election. If someone moves, changes their address, or a political affiliation, a new ballot goes out. In Cliff's case, records show he made a change to his voter registration on October 10th, triggering a new ballot. The old one is immediately deactivated. It doesn't count.
There's only one ballot at any time that's active, and the other one is inactive and can't be voted.
So the clear message here is, despite the fact you may, on a rare occasion, get 2 ballots, you're not going to be able to vote twice.
That's correct. Nobody can vote twice. You only get one shot at it.
Scott said if you happen to get 2 ballots, call election officials. They'll help sort it out. Additionally, you can track your ballot online, or in most counties, voters can sign up for text alerts when their ballot is sent and received. Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.
You may be one of the people kind of just now tuning into all this election news and opening up your ballot and looking at these measures that you see that you need to vote on, and you're wondering, well, what does this all mean? So in tonight's down ballot update, we're going to be breaking down the 4 Oregon statewide measures into which ones will add new taxes and the ones that won't add any new taxes. First up, we're going to talk about Oregon Measure 107. This is the donations one. This is the one that puts a cap on political campaign donations in Oregon. It won't cost you anything. I mean, it might cost some politicians some extra spending cash when they're trying to run for office, but as far as you're concerned, we're going to slide this one over into the no new taxes column. Next is Measure 108. You've probably seen a ton of ads on this one. This is the tobacco tax. And we're going to go ahead and slide this one into the new taxes, but these taxes are pretty specific to the people who buy these products. It will raise the taxes on a pack of cigarettes by $2 to $3.33 per tax overall in total taxes on a pack of cigarettes. It will also introduce a new tax on e-cigarettes. So if you smoke, you will pay some new taxes. Next is Measure 109. This is the one that will allow regulated psilocybin. And for those of you who are still kind of in the dark on this or wanting to learn more, psilocybin is to shrooms kind of what THC is to pot. Proponents say it has a lot of medical uses and should be available, but it is going to go into the no new tax column, because when we talk about your bottom line, that's the category we're putting it in. Finally, Measure 110. This one is a little bit tricky. It redistributes some marijuana taxes, but it doesn't add any new taxes. So again, this one goes into the no tax column. Of course, these measures are about more than just dollars and cents and taxes in your bottom line. So if you have additional questions about some of these, please reach out. Use that hashtag #HeyDan. We're going to answer a few of your questions when we finish the story. Next. Let's do a couple quick comments here. Scott Pyle writing in, with all the early voter turnout, are the election office rules to prohibit counting votes until a specific date? Will election results be known early? No. So right now they can count how many votes are actually coming in to let us know how they're stacking up, but they're not going to start counting who those votes go to until Election Day. And then Carol Q writing in, does Clark County, in Washington, also have a way to track their ballots, kind of like we have here in Oregon? Yes, you can do that there. It's on the Clark County website. It'd be kind of difficult to find. Just Google ballot tracker Clark County or something like that. It'll take you right to it. That's it for the story tonight. Thanks for being with us. If you have anything that's on your mind, I don't know, let me know. You said hashtag #HeyDan. In the meantime, see you tomorrow.